take a look at the specification design pattern. I have a guest this week with me, Fatih Aseni. I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself. Welcome.
Hi to everybody. I'm Fatih Aseni. I'm software architect. Actually, I'm software developer because I do developing all the time with my colleagues. And I have been part of aviation and airport industry for more than 10 years probably. And in the last couple of years, I have my own company. I'm running my own company, software company. You can find me on Twitter as Fiseni. You can find me on GitHub as Fiseni as well. I'm blog on Fiseni.com. So that's all, I guess.
Awesome. So we've been working together for a while now on the specification pattern. There's a Ardalis.specification NuGet package that you've forked and you've added a bunch of features to for your own use. And then you've been nice enough to kind of roll those back into the community package, which I really appreciate. And I know you've worked as well on the Microsoft reference app, the eShop on web sample that I work on as well. So I appreciate those open source contributions. And recently, you had some additional ideas for things that we were talking about adding to the specification package out there on GitHub. And I thought it'd be great to kind of talk through some of the ideas that we have for directions that we might go, see if anybody on the stream wants to ask questions or give us ideas from there, and kind of show some of the samples of how you use the specification, because I know you've got some different ideas of how you can use it beyond what I typically use it for.
Yeah, of course. You're sharing my screen, right?
Yeah, I think it's working.
Okay. So I don't know. We can, because all the stream we're gonna talk for specification. I think we have time, so we may start with explaining actually what is the specification pattern.
That sounds good.
Specification pattern, as in general, exists for quite some time actually. And it has to do more with business rules and business validations, more specifically. So the pattern predicates that you extract those validations in atomic classes, in separate classes. And on top of that, you create some abstraction, create some rule how to create those validations. So you have some abstractions with and or statements, etc. So you have one standardized way how to write those validations, and that's all as the pattern is concerned. But in order to be more clear and what was the driver of creating this pattern, we can just give some examples what the issues were in order to get to this pattern and what pattern is trying to solve actually. Imagine that you have some business validation. Okay, let's say you have an order, and at some certain point of time you actually want to validate the order if it's ready so you can ship the goods or not. For example, you might have some method, I don't know, validate order, and all that it does is actually just checks some flags that you have. If the address is entered, if I don't know, payment is done, etc. So you have one method, validate order. But you may assume that with time you need another validation, and your class will end up with a lot of methods that does some sort of validation regarding the order or order items or whatever. But not necessarily all these methods are related to each other. So most probably each method will require some dependencies that other methods don't. So you end up with a bloated class with a lot of methods, and you end up with a class that the constructor accepts a lot of dependencies, and not all those dependencies are required by all the methods actually. Sometimes you need just some simple validation that doesn't require any dependency, but however, you create instance of that class, no matter if you're doing manually or through IOC, and you unnecessarily will create a lot of objects that won't be used at all. So, what was the thinking? What was the approach here? So we said, okay, what if we take each method of this class and we we transfer them, we make them classes actually. Classes will just one simple method that will just say validate, for example. So we extract all these methods and create some classes, and those classes essentially will hold the information required the validations to be done. So the class itself won't do the process of validation. It will just hold all the required information for that particular task. That's why it's called specification. You know, specification as a word, what does it mean? It means that I have a list of properties needed for something. You know? So your computer have a specification. Specification of your PC is just list of properties of your PC. It's the same here. So we end up with a bunch of classes that are very atomic and very unique and do just one simple job. They validate just one particular business validation. And that's really a great place to be, you know, because you now have a infrastructure where you can add validations by just adding new files, by adding new classes. So we have here, and you remove actually just by deleting classes and nothing happens. It's great. You don't go and update or change anything existing. So it's the possibility that you break something into your code, it's much lower that way. Right. This is in general actually. So here what we have? We have the same principle, the same idea, but here we have applied the same idea in order to generate queries and to query the persistence basing in the same principles. So here we creating classes, which we call specification. We may call them query specification, nevertheless. And those classes actually, they don't represent the query to the database. They just represent the list of required information that query to be able to be built. Right. You know, you can read the specific. Exactly. We have some abstractions that we have created. So using those abstractions, you just populate the specification with the required information, and after that, somebody else's job will be just to read all those properties and to generate your query for your existing ORM that you have, for example.
Let me
stop
for one second and follow up on a couple things that you said there, because I think it's important. You mentioned that specifications allow you to have a separation of these validations from the other classes, and so that one of the things that applies is the single responsibility principle from Solid, where they only have this one responsibility of identifying what these validations or what these properties are of certain objects that will match that specification, that set of properties or conditions. And then the other part that I thought was key is that now, once you've separated that, you can add additional behavior to your system. Simply, where's my mic? My mic's high. Sorry, someone's saying that I sound quiet, and I'm trying to fix that. But I don't see. Maybe it's the wrong mic. Can you hear me, Joseph?
Yeah, it's okay.
And I want to make sure they can hear me too. Otherwise, I have problems. But the fact that you can add new behavior by just adding new classes, I think, is important. That's where you want to be with your class. That also is another solid principle. It's the open-closed principle.
Open-closed,
where you're able to extend behavior by just adding additional classes, not by touching classes that you already have. So I'm going to keep trying to fix the sound. This is the first time I've done a Skype interaction on OBS, and there's a few things that I didn't get right out of the gate, so I apologize. But I'll let you keep going, Fadi, and I'll try and remix the sound here. Before you continue, give me 1 second. All right, go ahead and just do a quick test. I want to make sure everybody can hear you. So, can you guys hear? Can you hear Fadi? I changed up the sound mixer, so hopefully. Do that test one more time. I'll listen. I don't think it's working. All right, I'm going to go back to the way it was. All right, go ahead. You should be good now.
Okay, now probably is okay, right? Everybody can hear me?
Yep, I hear you. I hear you through Twitch, so you're good.
Okay. So, simple set, specification is just a wish of yours. You know, when you write specification, you can read the specification in this way. You can say, I wish to have customer by name with particular name, including, I don't know, stores, and I want to order. It's just your wish, and you just store your wish somewhere, you know. And at the point that you want, that you need actually those data, you just take your wish, you give to the repository, and you say, okay, this is my wish, and then repository make your wish come true and give you the materialized data, give you the actual data. So this is very important. In the same way as actually, when I was talking about the business validation, the same way that we extracted everything from that service or from that class that you have a lot of methods, the same thing is happening here. So you might have some repository with a lot of methods. So now we shrink everything to a level to some tiny abstract repository, and you are just adding and removing functionalities by writing new specification or by deleting specifications and just passing the specification whenever we need to the repository, and repository tries to evaluate them and give you the results. This is a good place to be, I do think. But besides that, we have some small classes that conform SRP and open close principles, etc., etc. One more thing that is really important for me, and I do think is important, if you follow domain-driven design, what domain-driven design predicates actually? Domain-driven design says that the core part of your application should be actually the business domain. So you give the all the focus is made so the business domain to be described through code, and that part of the code to be as independent as possible. And why is that? Because you want that code to persist through time. You want that code to remain valid for 10 years, 15 years, etc., etc.
Right.
Whenever you put some dependency from outside, then you're not sure anymore that that code will remain unchanged, because those dependencies with time might change and you'll have to update. And if, by having some code that is in the central position and it changes only when business requirements change, that's the only time that you actually will need to change that code. And this is what domain-driven design predicates, but there is one small loophole here, you know. So in your core project, you have your entities, you have your repositories, you have value objects, services, enumerations, exceptions, etc. But one thing you don't have the knowledge what data you are trying to get from the persistence, you know. You have only one method name in your iRepository interface. You say just you can have one method, get customers by name. That's it.
Right,
okay?
right.
So that happens, that all the implementation is done somewhere outside from your domain model. And that's very important, you know, because you can't explain all your wish can't be explained within just one method name. You know, you can say get customers by name, but maybe you want to order that. You know, maybe
right.
you have order by name, order by etc. Blah blah blah.
Maybe you need to include some related properties, and sometimes
exactly.
you want to include some, and sometimes you don't.
So those informations no more live in your domain model, and this was a bit small. I can't say problem. It's just a small loophole in the concept of a long-living domain model. You know? Mm-hmm. And the best part of the specification is that the knowledge of what data you require remain in the domain model, in the core project. You store them as abstraction, as specifications, you know? And the implement infrastructure, I mean, the implementator, I might say, right. will just take those information and they will evaluate into their own language, but they won't add anything additional. Whatever you have in the specification, that's it. And this is the best part, I think, with the specification pattern. I think we can go on and just start giving some examples and start describing how you create specifications, etc. The previous days we added one sample application within the repository of specification. We have here in the sample folder, you have, so this is the standard layout for a domain-driven design, I might say. You have one core project, you have an infrastructure project where all your outer dependencies live, and you have some UI layer. Here, in our example, is just a web application, web API application.
Yep. That's basically like it's like my clean architecture template that you can use on GitHub also.
Yeah, exactly. So here in core, we have one folder specifications, and here we create our specification. Let's see how you create actually a specification. You create a class.
Can you make that a little bigger?
Oh yeah, of course. I forgot I'm in stream actually. Let's make it 150 probably. Is it okay now?
Looks great.
Yeah. So what you do, all you have to do is just create one class. You have to inherit from the base class specification. Here, we took out the word base, because regarding the best practices, whenever you don't need specifically to name it as base, just don't name it.
Sure.
Just keep it. But there are occasions that when you need to add that base, for example, just let me show you shortly. We have here iRepository base, I think. Yes, we name it repository base. Why we name it like this? Because we want users in their own projects, if they inherit this, so they can name it repository.
Right.
Yeah. In our case here, we don't need all that extra work, so we have named it specification. You have to tell which entity actually this specification is about, and you write your specification in your constructor.
Yep.
So here we have a bit changes from the last versions of this NuGet package. Starting by version 4, the internal infrastructure is a bit changed and refactored. And now you have, probably we think so, you have better usage in the context that the specification itself gives you, holds also a builder that by using the builder, you actually populating all the required fields for the specification. You're accessing the builder with a keyword query, and that's it. And if you click dot, you here have all the available methods that you can use in order to create that particular specifications. In our case, what we have done, in our case, we have just said, I want query. So my wish is to get all the customers where name is equal to this argument name. And I want to order all those customers by name, first of all, and then by address. That's it. So this is all you need to create one specification. That's all.
Yep.
As I said, by starting with version 4, we have this new usage where you can chain everything. And on top of that, everything seems like link. And most probably everybody is already aware and have used links. So these terms, these method names are already familiar to everybody, I guess.
Yeah.
So it's really easy to create.
I like this change. Before this, we had it called criteria. And so a specification would have a criteria, which was a lambda expression that would filter. And that made sense to me at the time, but I like it so much better now that we have this this query builder that matches link, because this is more, I think, familiar to most C# developers.
The driver here was, first of all, the idea here was, first of all, let's create one property that will represent builder. So the user won't need to remember the method names required. So now you just write query and you click, when you write dot, you have all here listed.
Yep.
So you don't have to remember all the specific method names.
Right.
That's why I think it's more easy. By the way, just last week, actually, we did one more refactoring. All these methods right now are implemented as extensions to builder interfaces. And now we have even better usage, because previously when you get to the point when you are on the second level, like then order or then include, you had to start again by query, And now you don't have to. You can just continue. And this is really exactly like using directly link.
Nice.
Okay.
Yep.
The only caveat here is if you want to use select, well, it's really a pain in the heck to implement the select functionality, because it returns new types, so you have to take care in the separate specifications. So with specifications, when you can use selector, you always have to start again with query. That's the only caveat. You can say email. So now what this does is just take all customers with this name, order, blah, blah, blah. And in the end, don't give me the all object customer. You just select the email properties, and you'll get list of string, because a string is declared here.
Yep.
And the email is string, actually.
Sure. Nice. Yeah, and the thing that this does, that I like the best, and I see in many of my customers' code bases, is where you have a repository, you're already using repository as a pattern, but you're feeling this pain because you keep having to add additional query methods or specific methods to get data in just the right shape, right? So you have like list customers, great, okay. Then we have list customers by name. Then we have list customers by email. Then we have list customers by name with orders, and your repository just gets longer and longer and longer with all of these things. Once you go to this approach, look at our repository base for a moment, Fadi. Like, you never have to touch your repository implementation again. Like, every time you have a new way to build something, you just create another specification, and you pass that specification to the list method on the repository, and then it applies whatever rules. It gives you the shape of data you want, including filtering, but also what do you want to include with that query, and what do you want to select coming back from it.
Okay, in the plugin package, in the specification.entity framework core, which holds the evaluators for entity framework core, we provide also this repository base that you can use if you want. You can create your own repositories, and you just create instances of specification evaluator in order to evaluate the specifications. But if you are all okay with what we have here, you just go ahead and use this one as well. I open this, I can show you how all of that is evaluated. So where are the lists? Okay, so when you say list async here and you provide the specification, what you have to do actually, you take that specifications, you take your DB context, you take the DB set that you are working with, and providing a queryable of that DB set to the specification evaluator. The specification evaluator will go through all of this stuff, all of that information the specification holds, so that particular specification. It evaluates and gives you back one iQueryable again. This iQueryable is already evaluated and populated with everything you need. So after you get this information, all you have to do is just say to list async. And at this moment, what happens, the entity framework evaluates the iQueryable, creates the SQL query, gets the data, and gives you back. And that's all.
Do you want to look at that evaluator?
Okay,
they're
go in that details.
They're pretty straightforward, I think.
Yeah, actually, so let me show you what specification holds, first of all, so you can have a better idea. So this is our specification. Maybe I can open the interface better. Yeah, the interface I specification, it has list of where expressions, list of order expressions, list of search criteria. We'll talk about this later. It has property for take, skip, cache enable, cache key, and this includes stuff. So this is...
That's it. That's the whole thing.
Yep. through the builder, and any specification, whatever you have written in the specification, specific stuff from here will be populated, and in the evaluator you just go one by one and try to build on top of that input queryable that you get in the evaluator. So in the evaluator you get this input query, which is just empty DB set, and you just start adding stuff. So in this package, we try not to manipulate the expressions that you have entered while creating the specification. No? So when you say where, you can write whatever you want inside as a predicate, as long as that predicate is supported by your ORM. You know?
Right.
So you are not changing the expression. You are holding the expression as it is. So let me show you. Here we have, we are just looping through all those expressions that we have in the specification, and we just say, on top of that input queryable,
right,
we just add one more criteria on top of that. Here also we changed I think last week we did these changes. We changed the order of evaluation. Why is that? Because of the search. The search always must be before the skip and take. You know?
Right.
Because skip and take actually should be in the end. Previously, this specification evaluator in the plugin package was inheriting by some specification evaluator base that we had,
right,
but no longer that is true. Everything will be evaluated here. So the order will be, first of all, process all the include stuff. Then you have all the criteria, where expressions. Then you have this search that we'll talk about later. Then you do the ordering stuff. And in the end, you do the pagination. If the specification is of type that supports the selector, on top of everything this, in the end, you just select the required property that you have entered while creating the specification.
All right. Now let's talk for a minute about iQueryable, because these rely on iQueryable, and they're passing around. They're getting in an iQueryable. They're returning back an iQueryable. And our repository is using iQueryable internally to do this. Some folks might wonder, like, well, why don't we just return back an iQueryable from the repository and allow us to do that work somewhere else?
Well, the whole idea, actually, maybe, it's not the whole, but one of the ideas of the specifications or with a repository in general is actually to not let the querying logic to be leaked outside of that part,
right,
out of the repository or out of the place where you're actually writing the queries.
Yeah.
iQueryable is a really powerful construct in .NET, along with expressions, etc. iQueryable, when you do iQueryable, when you add stuff to iQueryable, when you add through the extension methods, when you add criteria, etc., nothing is evaluated in that moment. You just built one giant tree of information. And in the end, for example, in the case of Entity Framework Core or Entity Framework Sys or whatever, in the end, when you say toList or when you say first or default async or the last method, actually, that's the command to the Entity Framework that says, okay, take this giant tree of information, try to parse it, and do whatever you want and give you the data. So if you expose iQueryable here, actually everybody outside of this part of the application, of the core part, even in UI, somebody can add something else. So you have iQueryable that is populated with all kinds of criteria, and some user in UI just says additionally where something else. And tomorrow when you want to debug this or you want to add something else, it's really cumbersome to just search through all the code base and see what you have done. Right. It's nice to have encapsulated everything in one place. It will be much easier for you tomorrow. Yep. Not necessarily today, because you have a lot of abstractions.
Right. No, and I totally agree with that. You want to keep your data manipulation, your querying logic inside the repository, or at least inside that behind that abstraction. It doesn't have to all be in that class, right? We're going to put it in different classes in these specifications, but from the caller of the repository, they aren't getting back something as a result that they can then just continue to manipulate and add additional query logic to. Because that could go anywhere, right? That could go in a service, it could be in a controller, that could even be in a view. And trying to track all that query logic down can be very, very difficult and error-prone in a large application. With specification, one more quick thing. With specification and repository, if you look at like our example of repository base, what you're returning back is just dumb lists of data, dumb collections of domain entities, of domain types, and not a iQueryable that you could continue to manipulate. And so you have this really easy rule that all developers on a team that's using this know, which is that all of the queries actually happen before I get the data back from the repository. Once I get the data back from the repository, I'm in memory, right? I have gotten the data from the external source, and anything else I do is going to be in memory. Because otherwise with LINQ, it's often really difficult to know what will execute in memory versus what will execute on the data provider. And this gives you a really strong way to see that. If it's happening inside the repository, it's most likely, not always, but it's most likely going to be hitting the data provider and using LINQ to entities. But once it's back, it's definitely 100% of the time, it's an in-memory list, and you're going to apply your operations to that in-memory list.
Yep, exactly. Actually, when you're doing domain-driven design and you have those aggregates that hold the list of their children, for example, order item or whatever, you always wanna have those lists already materialized. They are in-memory data. You don't wanna have some construct that is still not parsed and still not executed. Why? Because it can make much trouble and much problems afterwards. So it's nice when you give, for example, let me try and open something from entities here in the sample application. We have customer here. So here we are returning IEnumerable, but in the behind we have the list actually here. So you really want to have this already. You have a collection that is already in memory. Why? Because it will be much easier if you have here. If you're doing here. It's not list if you are returning IEnumerable or iQueryable from the repository and a collection that still doesn't hold the data. The user on the one that will try to consume this property here, they have no information if it is already in memory, if it's not. And that may cause really a lot of bugs and errors in the application. So just make sure when you expose something that is already in memory. That's the short answer.
Right, and also don't, I think what you're saying, I want to just call out, like, don't rely on lazy loading as a feature, at least not in web applications, to populate that for you. Because the thing you'll end up with there are performance issues a lot of the time, where as soon as on some view somewhere someone is iterating through customers and then iterating through their stores, let's say, maybe we want to see, give me a list of customers and how many stores each one has. Right. Well, now on that view, if stores is being lazily evaluated, it's going to make a query to get those stores for every row in that list. Right, and you're going to have this n+1 query problem where instead of writing one query where you could have gotten all that data in one hop to the database, now you're going to make n+1 queries. If you have 50 customers on the page, you're going to make 51 queries to get that data, and your page is going to be incredibly slow at runtime and inefficient. But you may not ever know that on your local dev machine where you're just using an in-memory database or a database with one customer and one store. You'll never see it until you ship the code, and then it's too late.
Okay, now that we have shown some basic ideas regarding specifications, maybe I can talk what's the experience in real-world applications specifications. Mm-hmm. So all of what we have talked right now, it's all the good stuff, actually. The bad stuff in the real-world applications, for example, okay, in the sample application, always everything is clean.
Right.
So in entities, you have just one entity here, etc., etc. But in real-world applications, you might have 10, 15 aggregates,
right,
probably in some large applications. And for each aggregate, you might have, I don't know, 5 to 10 different specifications. And so in the real-world application, you will not end up with just 3 or 4 specifications here. You may end up with 15, 20, 50, I don't know. It depends on your application. And we find that gets hard to manage somehow. Why? Because now developers spend time to be creative and just create new names. You need customer by name. You need customer by name ordered by something. The first caveat is that the names of the specification get really long, and on top of that, you have a lot of specification, and all of them somehow sound really similar. You know, customer by name, customer by name stores. So in your code, where you are trying to use this specification, while you try to create instances and to provide to the repository, you always have to go back to cross-check if this is the right specification, if not, etc., etc. So one way to mitigate this, at least by my experience, is why not create specifications that look like this? This will help you at least for reading stuff and for getting different combinations of the aggregate with aggregate based on some additional information, based on some filter. Imagine, for example, you have one controller here, customer's controller. You will run afterward this application and you will see the results. It's just a simple API controller. And imagine you have one get here, okay? And the get, you accept, I don't know, 4 or 5 different query filters.
And you can imagine this is coming from like a search page or something, right? Like
yeah, exactly. You have some, I don't know, some part in the top where you can select the name, the email address. Yep. You can write or grab some drop down, etc., etc. Mm-hmm. So if you don't go this way, actually you have one separate get for everything probably.
Yeah.
And then you'll end up with separate specifications for everything.
Right, and that gets painful.
Yes, exactly. And what if, for these particular usages and for these particular cases, what if we have only one method here and we group everything into one input here that we have called customer filter, for example. And customer filter holds name for name, email, address, and inherits from base filter. And base filter, we may store stuff that we want to be available to all possible filters.
Sure.
We have some stuff regarding the pagination here. I have added just as an example, for example, load children. So if load children is set, then you'll include all the children of that aggregate root. Not practical because one aggregate root might have several ones, and in different occasions you may want different children loaded. But it just as an example, you can add something like this here. So here you have customer filter. This is getting populated by the UI automatically because you are getting in the controller, right? ASP.NET Core will take care of creating this model. If you say from query, that whatever is put in the URL as query, ASP.NET Core in the model binding will try and create object for this model that we have here. And after that, what do we have set here? So first of all, I want to assume that, okay, ASP.NET will fail and it will be null. So I'll just create new instance with some default values. And here, actually, you can set those base properties that you want. Yes, for this controller here, for this method in the controller here, I want to load children. I need pagination here. And you pass the filter to some service, okay? I intentionally put here service, not necessarily you have this infrastructure in your part. You may have something else. And in service, what the service does? Takes the filter, creates the specification and passes that filter, takes the specifications, provides to the repository, and gets the data. So you have just a couple of lines of code and nothing else.
And the service's job is,
yes,
it's mostly just to do mapping and translating.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I said maybe you don't have this kind of constructor service. Probably, I don't know. I don't prefer, but maybe you want to write everything here and then control it. It's your preference.
Sure.
So we covered all possible combinations here with just few lines of code. This is what we have here. This is what we have in the service. And we have created one customer specification that looks like this.
Right.
So here we are evaluating all possible combinations. First of all, you have to remember everything that you define here. These should be nullable properties. So probably we should be like this, something with in this project,
if we use
null
reference types. Yep.
Why you want here nullable stuff? Because you want to distinct if that filter is given through UI or not.
Right.
And then in the specification, you just go one by one and just.
If it's specified, then we're going to use it. If it's not, then we'll pass by.
Exactly. And by the way, if you, we don't want to do this in the NuGet package because we don't want to enforce users to have some base filter of ours. But if you do this in your applications, you can write one additional specification that will be your base specification, for example, and you can take this common stuff and you put in the basic specification.
Sure.
So you don't have to write this in each new specification that you create. It will be just some standardized stuff that you have for everything.
Do we have that in the sample? That would be something we might.
No, actually, this is really a simple sample that we have done just quickly.
Right.
But okay, we can go ahead and create that actually.
Sure.
Here in specification, I can say my specification. Okay. Let's make it public, or maybe you can use, public, okay. And you wanna inherit, okay, this should be T. T like this. And here, okay, we have to define, I think we have, yes, base filter, we have base filter. Let's call base filter. Here we're not passing anything, okay. Customer spec, we can take this part.
Right, and since base filter has those on it, you can just always do that. Yep. But the include, we'll have to have a loop or something, right?
Yes, exactly. This is specific stuff. Okay,
so
this
maybe just paging. Maybe just paging. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyhow, this should work like this.
Sure.
So in your customer spec, you won't have this part here.
Right.
And this is the good, and of course, you have to inherit from your specification now.
Yes.
It should be my specification. Yeah, that's it. Okay, and here you have to provide like this filter.
All right.
Okay, let's see if this builds. Yep, no. So this approach, it won't solve all your problems, of course, because you always will need additional classes, additional specifications for different specific tasks. But at least for each aggregate root, you'll have something like that looks like this. And at least for reading, for querying, for filtering data, where you want just to show data, and you have some filters in the UI, you can cover all the possible combinations with this approach.
Right. Yeah, that's good. And a lot of applications have a couple pages where someone can search through a bunch of things with some UI. So it's a very common scenario. Another thing that we can do, we developers that are consuming this package in terms of organizing, in our samples, my sample too, like applications that I write, we're often guilty of organizing things in a way that's trying to show the different types of patterns that we're trying to demonstrate in the sample. And we're doing that here, right? If you look at this sampleapp.core, you see we have entities and we have specifications as separate things, but most of these specifications belong to an aggregate. And so if you start to organize this more like with feature folders or vertical slices or whatever you want to call them, right, you would put the customer aggregate and its specifications and filters all in one folder so that as you're working in that space, everything you need is right there and you're not having to bounce between these separate root level folders.
Exactly. That's actually a much better approach. And I also practice it in my own project.
Me too.
And I did this because this is more standard way of doing things. It's
Right.
more familiar for people. So it's nice to show it this way. But usually you'll have, for example, folder customer. People also tend to have some folder features.
Sure.
And that customer inside the features. It depends on how many stuff you'll have in these core projects. And if it gets, I don't know, it's either way. It's based on your preferences.
Mm-hmm.
And in this customer, actually, you have the customer aggregate completely.
Right.
You may want to create the folder entities, but I don't use it that way. I just put everything in this folder.
Right.
So I put the aggregate and the related entities here.
Yep.
I put the related custom exceptions that I might have for this. You may put the specifications here. Interfaces may be here or might not be, because not always interfaces have to do with one particular aggregate root. They are more a bit general.
Yep.
So you have some folder.
Interfaces I usually keep top level just because they usually are not specific. Domain events are another one that would go in there. Right. If you have an order added event, right, to a customer, it's only ever going to be used when a customer adds an order, so it belongs in the customer feature folder.
In the real projects, for sure you'll have some value objects. Now with .NET 5 we have records, so it will be much better and much easier in that context.
Right.
You'll have some services here. Services that live here actually will just not will, but they must accept domain constructs, and they will return domain constructs.
Right.
So the services here are the services that work on some basic business core logics. And you, after that, in the UI layer, or maybe you'll have one more layer application code that is on top of the core. Mm-hmm. And there you'll have some services that will do all those mapping stuff.
Right.
A lot of people don't like all that long chain of codes. They don't like this part at all. They just get everything that is here and put those stuff in the controllers directly.
Right.
But I still urge you to use this. Why? Because this get customer, for example, maybe you will not just controller. Maybe you'll need just in several places. So it's nice to have it in one place as a service. So I don't know. Okay.
All right. Can we run the app and see these in action?
We can just run. Yeah, exactly.
And maybe add some different ones to see how you would add a new feature.
Okay, spec sample. Let me just delete this bit.
No.
Okay, if you clone this from the GitHub, for example, you still don't have a project, and if you clone this, talking for all the users that are listening to us, automatically this web app project will be selected as default, and you just can click run and see what sample does. A lot of people ask me how you do that some particular project to be default, and that's really weird actually. If you wanna configure something to be default, you have to list it as second project in the solution file. I don't know why second, but I don't have a good explanation for this. But whatever project is placed here as second in the SLN file, that project is
the default startup.
Exactly. After that, if you change the default here, then that information is stored in the VS folder that you have in the root directory of your project. But by default, it's taken a second from the SLN file. Okay, let's stop talking. Let's check here. Here now the DB is being created, it will be seeded automatically.
Right.
And okay, let me.
Are we just doing APIs? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So when you click customers, okay, let's put breakpoints, and let's see what's going on. We had customers controller. Yeah, right. So you see here, here the filter we have though, but everything is new, so nothing happens. We just have the pagination here, and it's enabled, and we'll get all the customers. And now, if you do all possible combinations, for example, name, customer 1, we'll get only customer 1. Okay, we can make for address field, we have used the search capability. And actually, this is the new feature that we have added to the specification package. The search, let me show the usage first. If you specifically need SQL-like operator, then you can use this new method that we have added, search. You have to define what you want to search, which field you want to search. We want to search address, and you put your pattern here. So what have to be searched? We have set here all the substrings. Give me all addresses that contain some substring here for the address. So when I have put here mer2, it will get all the addresses that contain this mer2, right? If I have 3 here, we have only 3.
Right.
And then we can combine them. Actually, we can say, oh, pardon. We can say address this and name customer 1. Now it will be specific. It should be okay. Now we find nothing because customer 1 has address 1, right?
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. Right.
All possible combinations that we can do right now, everything is going just through a few lines of code. So we don't write anything else. Whenever you want additional filter, you just go and add properties to this customer filter, and automatically you get this.
Nice. Right, and your UI doesn't have to change, your controller doesn't have to change, you don't have to add another get method, you don't have to add another repository method. In your case, you just have to touch that filter. And if you weren't using that filter type, you would just add another specification. But in the case of another specification, you'd probably have a lot of duplication at that point. So the filter is just one more layer of abstraction that's allowing you to keep that duplication of specification classes to a minimum.
Exactly, but because usage of filters are actually really specific to your own project, right. That's why we don't want to abstract this and put in the NuGet package, because we don't want to enforce, first of all, users to have to must use this hour-based filter, for example. But this is one particular usage that you can adopt in your applications, and I think it will be much cleaner for certain tasks. Okay, maybe now we can explain one by one all the possible methods that we have while creating the specifications, because we didn't talk about that for everything. So first of all, we have this where, and as we said in the beginning, whatever you put here, we are not changing this.
Right.
So this is same as we have. Let me show you like this. I think I've created one customer repository that works directly with DB. Yes, here. Okay. So imagine that you have. Let me do so you can write the same one. Okay. Then delete. Okay, what I have here name.
Double equal.
Oops. So whatever you are writing here, what happens with the background? Whatever this is inside, it's just taken and it's just placed here inside as expression, as a whole expression.
And can we show
exactly this?
We can show the SQL that's going to generate, right?
Yeah, we can open the profiler and we can show that as well. Okay, just let's go quickly and explain. So where you are using, as you usually use in your link statements, you have order by, this also same as doing here, the same usage,
right?
The same naming of the method, so it's really familiar. After order by, you have then by. Let me show you. Then by and then by descending.
Mm-hmm.
After that, we have include statements. After include, you can use then include. This is the second level. So stores, and after that, include me. I hate this in the new.
Come on, Visual Studio, stop helping. There we
go. Yep.
Nice.
Okay, and just the last week we added this search. As I said, if you need specifically the like operator in SQL, by the way, if you want to use like operator, you have to write the query in entity framework code like this. No? So this query specifically will be translated with like in the SQL code.
Now we were talking about this. We were talking about this earlier. I know you did some research on this. How is this different than if I say where x such that x.address.contains something?
Yeah. If you want to search for substring, most probably it will be the same as writing the following. You have DB context, you have customers, and you say where. We have here address, and we can write here contains, and we have address search done.
But that doesn't generate the same SQL as the other one, right?
Exactly. The SQL will be different, and we'll run the profiler and we'll show the difference. This will generate char index in SQL, and this will generate like in SQL. Char index, if you are searching for substrings, maybe this is more efficient way. Char index will work faster, especially if you have a wildcard in the beginning and in the end. But in some particular cases, when you have some more complex patterns, you have the opportunity right now to use also a like, and you do that by using the search method in the specifications. Whatever you put here in the search specification, that will be used here inside, and you'll be able to get it as like in the generated SQL query. Okay, let me get back everything as it was. Here we don't do any changes. Let me see what changes I have here. Customer by name spec. Okay, it's okay, it doesn't matter. Customer spec, we don't have. In order to run the profiler, actually, I have to run an SQL Express instance.
Right. I wish Profiler worked on LocalDB. That'd be nice.
I don't think that ever will.
I don't think it will either. But I'm sure it was a design decision not to. But it would be helpful if it did.
Let me. If you guys never have used the profiler, this how you do it. You have the SQL Server Profiler. You run these applications. First of all, when you do the new trace, okay, I want to do a new trace, you have to select your instance. In our case, we'll be using SQL Express. And here in the event selections, I check out this stuff because I don't need them. You'll be bloated with unnecessary information.
Right. Yeah, that's a lot of noise.
Usually you want just RPC completed and SQL batch completed. Okay. Let me just prepare the query here. For example, customers, and we have address 2, right? Happen. Couldn't find it.
It's trying to find it on stores, not on customer.
Oh, yeah.
I think because of the include.
Yeah, we changed the specifications here. Let me see. Oh, yes, for this part here. Then include.
Good.
Okay, sorry.
That's what happens when you change your demo on the fly before you run it. Slash customer. Nice.
Okay.
What do we get on the SQL?
Let's clean actually here. Let's clean it completely. Run it once again.
Cool.
And this is the query. So as you can see, this is generated as Slack.
Yep.
Okay? Really straightforward way. Let's now do this pause like this. And let's change the specification to run the contains. So let's copy this, comment out this, let's put like this. How we can do that? We can do with where. Here we have contains, and we have here filter, address, and we don't need this part.
Right.
Yes, exactly. So if we run again, customers.
Okay. Right. Here we go. All right, now we can see them side by side.
So that's the difference. The first query was with like, and the second one is, as you can see, it uses char index.
Right.
So for the particular task of searching by substring, this will give the same results, and most probably, I think this will be more performant. This will be faster.
Right.
But in other cases, even in the case, for example, if you have this condition here, if you don't have the wildcard in the beginning, I think that in this case, like will be a bit faster because it will be using the indexes in more clever way. But except that, like we can, okay, let's comment out this, let's put this. You can put something more complex here. We can write, let's just say, okay, let's not use this at all. Let's just say A to D, or what was MER2, right?
Right.
Yeah, but our seeds are really dummy seeds, so I don't think we can run very. Let me see the seed. What I have done here. Oh, this is really dummy seed. Anyhow, my point is that here you can put really complex stuff here. Just recently, I think yesterday, I found really good. Okay, I'm using Edge. I'm new to this one.
But with that A to D, what that's saying is, instead of matching anything, it's almost like a regular expression at that point, right? Yeah.
Exactly. For example, what this means, it means that you get all the records that start by from A to D. I want to say the like is actually much more powerful than char index because it's by design like that. It's by design method that does this pattern matching, so you have much more freedom to do whatever you want. I'm not sure if you'll ever need that, but if you ever need, you have it.
Right, you get the flexibility. And if you don't need it, then just don't worry about it. It doesn't add any complexity to the specification implementation.
Yeah, it's just really it has really straightforward usage. So, okay. We had one more feature that I think that we didn't merge that yet. Maybe here we have one more. Yeah, there is one more open pull request. We've been talking with Steve regarding this. I don't know if users need that or if they like that. We might include this. I'm not quite sure if it will be very. It will be required that anyone, because what this does, the idea was while creating the specifications, let's put some possibility for in-memory operation after you get the data. So, okay, you have all the information for the query, that query is parsed and executed, you got the data, and you need some additional filtering on top of that. First of all, if you are in a situation, when you need that, it means that you have inefficient query somehow. You know, that's why it was not very logical to use it.
Sometimes you've got, sometimes you have a function that you've defined that operates on your domain objects and can tell you whether or not something should be in a particular state. Right, like maybe you've got a special set of functions to designate whether a customer is a special customer, they're a preferred customer, right? And that set of conditions is not something that you can translate easily into a database query because it might be, you know, I mean, I'm sure there's some way you probably could, but it may be very complex, right? You might have a whole set of business rules that you evaluate to say, well, if the customer has purchased more than $1,000 in the last year, or you know, the customer signed up for our special program, or this, that, or the other, right? And so you could build this rule engine and evaluate all those rules in memory, but you can't say .where C equal greater than C dot is special customer and have entity framework translate that for you from your C# rules, typically. And so unless you evaluate them all as specifications, which is an option, I suppose. But now if you want to be able to perform that in-memory selection and say, give me back all the customers from Ohio, and then in memory, now filter it further and only give me the preferred customers, right? That would be an example where you might use this, right?
Exactly. One more example that I thought of was if you are using localizations and somehow you're doing part of localization in your domain model, which is not very convenient, and I don't think you're doing that because localizations usually are UI concern, and you always do that in there. But at some cases, you have content translation.
Right.
For example, list of countries, and maybe in database you have a name of countries, but also you wanna get the list of countries from the domain model, but already translated in the required language somehow. Maybe it's not the best example, but then you can do it here. You can read the resource files if you have a separate localization project, or I don't know,
right.
And you can go it through. One more usage that I was thinking of is if you're using domain events, and in particular, if you're using .NET events as domain events. So the usage is plus and equal. So if using .NET events, and imagine, okay, let's go like this.
And you've still got this in another branch, right? Now, we haven't merged it, but that branch is there, right?
This one, yeah, in memory is still here, I guess. It's from in-memory branch, yeah. Okay, customer aggregates. Imagine that store is child of customer. And imagine here we have some event. This is
it's a good name.
Something is happening with my keyboard, but
yeah, it's not happy with that.
You have to.
There we go.
Okay, this is embarrassing. I can write one simple thing: public event. Actually, what was the usage of this?
You were going to specify that you could have like I don't know, let's say when we change the store name, we want to bubble that up. So
actually, I have to say what is this probably event handler. Yeah, probably it was this way. Yes. For example, store has one event that does something, and and the customer actually should be subscribed to this event. For example, forget the customer with store. Imagine this like with order and order item.
Right.
So order item has some event. My prices have changed, for example. And in the order, you have some property grand total, for example.
Yeah.
So whenever the some property regarding prices is changed in the order item, it will fire the event, okay, my prices are changed. And because the order will be subscribed to that event, you'll just update the grand total by summing up all of the prices of its children. Yeah. So if you're doing this way, for example, this is .NET event, classic .NET event, you might have hard time to know when actually this customer, at which part of the code you'll do the subscription action, because you must have to subscribe to it, right? And now that we have this, we may do it exactly here. This X here is the customer, actually. And we can say this customer subscribe to all the children's events. And at the moment that you get data back from the repository, you already have construct that is completely set, that you don't have to do additional actions for subscribing to some events, etc., etc. Everything is done in the background because you have put it here. And it's really nice because it will live within your specification here. It will not be partially just scattered all over your code. It will be in one place.
Right.
So that might be some usage. I don't know.
Yeah, I've got an example. I'll throw it in the chat too, but let me throw it up on the screen here. So in my Ardalis domain events demo repo, and Fatih, you probably can't see this unless you look at Twitch, but I have a example here where there's a client and it's using language, C# language domain events. And so to hook up to it, you have to do it typically in the application somewhere. You have to wire up those events to say that you're going to respond to them and trigger which handler is going to respond. So here in this case, when the customer name changes, we can trigger that from here because we wired that up when we created our client. And if we look at the, that's the wrong thing right there. If we look at the customer, just like Fatih was showing you, it's exposing this this event here to do that work, and then we just trigger that whenever something happens that should raise that event. The thing that this would give us inside the specification is that you wouldn't have to have the programmer that's working with the customer wouldn't have to remember to do this step themselves, right? When you say to the repository, give me back this customer, or give me back this order, and it has some domain events it needs to use, those would already be wired up for you because your specification knows to do it. And so the client never has to worry about it. The specification needs to remember to do it, but if that's kind of your standard, is that specification's responsibility is to give a fully good to go aggregate that has all of its events wired up, then that's a good place to do that. So
yeah, and actually it's really easy to forget if you're doing on the client side,
Definitely.
Even worse, if you forget to do that, then a lot of stuff won't happen, and you'll have bad data in your while persisting it. For example, if you forgot to subscribe to the order item event, the grand total of order will be not updated, and you'll have some wrong data persisted afterward in the database.
Man, I
you're seeing my screen.
Back to your screen now,
yeah. Oh, okay. I just opened. I thought that you'll be talking regarding this part. I opened your project regarding the clean architecture.
Right. And this one's not using. Yeah, it's not using language domain events.
Exactly. This is some. I think you have some aggregator here for the events, most probably.
Yeah, they get added to base entity. There's a collection on base entity, and then they get triggered when you save the entity.
Okay, this is another approach. If you're going with the classic approach where you have those .NET events defined, that the in-memory usage might be regarding this method. Okay.
Have you done anything with caching with the specifications? I have some clients that are using them for that. They're
not yet with specifications.
Okay.
I usually have caching in my applications, but I still have not used the caching with specifications.
Okay.
Let me actually, this is, it's not very large project, but it's kind of medium project. Let me show you just real world applications that I have been applied. I have applied specifications here.
Awesome.
Okay.
Positron Dev is your company, right?
Yeah. I use Positron Dev as namespace for all my applications. This is actually desktop applications. I just wanted to show different usage and how easy it is if you use those filters. Now you will see the benefit of using those filters. Imagine here, for example, okay, that is just, okay. See how many filters I have here. I have, I don't know, 10 filters probably. These a bit specific applications. It has to do with cargo operation in airports, actually. It's still, we are still working on this, so the design is still not so good. If you're
where's your localization?
The localization, this is in Macedonian, actually. I live in Skopje in Macedonia.
Nice.
So this is completely in Macedonian language and has fully support for localizations. I still haven't translated everything in other languages, but I'll show you that also. So here you can search, for example, by, I don't know, number of air bill. This is airway bill, by the way. So as you can see, I search immediately this. So I can combine this with date, with the customer here somehow. I want only this customer. Okay. And in the backend, I actually have just 2-3 constructs that do everything that you see here.
Nice.
Okay, that was just simple.
Do you want to show the specifications?
Oh yeah, pardon. Here is a bit more complicated in the context that I have one domain project, and on top of that I have application project. Why I do this actually, if you are interested, I add this additional step because I have different UIs here. I have web, I have GUI, etc., etc. And some services that do that translation work, some stuff are common for all of these UI layers, you know. So I want to have some services, UI services that are applicable for also for my WinForm application, but also for my web application, etc., etc. So why just not put in one place? That's why there is one more layer here. In the specifications, okay, I have here, we are testing here, so most probably it will not be like this in production. This is, lately I'm using this layout for specifications. In the specifications, ignore this, all this includes. In productions, there won't be 5 includes here. We are testing here. This is my layout. The specification, first of all, we have one constructor with ID only. So I can find one particular entity. I have one constructor with a list of IDs, if I need yes, and one more constructor that is with this filtering stuff that we have talked about. So here I have filtered, I don't know, there are a lot of conditions based on the applications, but it's the same idea actually. Because I have a lot of fields, I have a lot of conditions here, but this saves my life a lot. Why? Because now I have only one, I think, if I remember correctly.
And so with this approach, correct me if I'm wrong, you don't necessarily have to have a different specification for each kind of query. You just have a different constructor for each kind of query. Where, you know, instead of saying get by ID, get by IDs, get by filter, you know, as different repository methods, or having a, you know, AWB spec by ID specification and by IDs specification, you know, you're able to get all that down to just one file.
Actually, you will create your own standard.
Yeah, sure.
You know?
I'm just saying how you're doing it here is interesting.
Yeah, My standard, as I said, I have at least one specification per aggregate, and this I mean, the standard, I must have this specification, and this specification will hold three constructors. It will have ID, filter, and list of IDs. But most usually you'll need much more. Let me show you here what we have. See, we have a lot of specifications.
Sure.
So I have airway build specification, but I also have airway build package specification, notification specification, airway build for invoice. So this is while creating the invoice for that particular airway build, I just get all the data that I need for. And why is this different? Because in this particular case, I have to include everything here, you know?
Right.
So in this filtering specification, most probably in the end, we'll just take out most of them. It depends what we want to show in the screen.
Right.
But when we are doing some complex operations, and this is quite complex operation, while generating the invoice for all the usages, etc., etc. And here you see I need also a customer. On top of the customer, I also need the address, etc. Let me show you why. I don't know if because this is test database, I don't have a lot of data here. Okay, I don't have here a lot of data. Oops. Okay. So here's the invoice, and when I create, in this particular case, I'm using that specification Ardalis for invoice because I have a lot of data here.
Right.
Okay? And I need all those informations in order to effectively create this invoice, etc. Anyhow, you'll find your standard, you'll find your usage, you'll find whatever works for
right.
you. But
the low-level pattern works great for decoupling this stuff, getting it out of your repository, and keeping it out of the rest of your application if you're not using repository or if you're using a queryable. Like if you just use dbset all over, then you've got this query logic just everywhere in your app, and it becomes a real challenge.
Okay, well, while we are in that subject, I never predicate to people to just use one paradigm, to use one pattern. You know, you have to go and try everything. Even myself, I don't use domain-driven in every application. Sure. You know, it's your decision. Everybody should decide based on all the parameters that you have. For example, not always everything is about technical stuff. You know, first of all, you also have to think about your team. Is this your new team that you are not still familiar with these people? You still don't know each other's style, probably. You know, maybe they are more comfortable working in some other particular way. Okay, here I'm not trying to say that you have to break all the standards. You still have to conform to some clean code designs. For example, you have to conform probably to SRP, to not repeat yourself, etc., etc. I'm more talking about some general infrastructure decisions, like either I'll do some vertical slicing in my application, or I'll just slice horizontally, or will I do microservices? All these approaches work great, you know, but it depends. It depends on the circumstances. It depends on the project.
Yep.
It depends on your plan with the project, how long this project will be alive and will be working productions, and a lot of factors to consider.
Yep. That standard consultant answer to everything is it depends, right? Because it does, right? The context, all those factors play into it. Knowing about a different design pattern, knowing about a different data access pattern, a different way to organize or structure your application, it doesn't mean that that's the only way to do it, right? Even if you watched a YouTube video or a conference talk that said how great it was, but knowing several of them means that you understand that there are different ways to do it, and they each have pros and cons. And so being able to have a toolbox of different approaches that you can apply means that you can at least make a decision about what's the most appropriate. Because if you only know one way to do it, if you only have one hammer, everything looks like a nail, and you're going to try and apply it everywhere, even if it's not the best choice. So that's why it's just a good idea to understand like some different options or approaches to these similar problems, so you can apply the best one, the right one, to your situation.
Exactly. And on top of that, once you choose one design, one infrastructure design for your application, then try to make most of it. Try to make it right. For example, if you're doing domain-driven design, then try to maximize the profit of such design by doing everything how it should be done. You should, for example, separate into aggregates. You should take care of some details that are predicated by domain-driven design, because only if you're doing one pattern right, at that moment you'll get all the benefits of that pattern. Doing something just half-ish somehow, you'll just get frustrated because you'll think something is not working, this is not good, this is not I like. You have to give it a try and do it properly and see if you really like it and if it's okay with your own way of doing so.
Right. I agree. All right. Do we want to try and merge that pull request? Do you have anything else that you want to cover? What else should we do? We got about half an hour left before I typically call it for my, my stream. What do you think we should do?
Actually, I'm not seeing the chat of the Twitch. If anyone has any questions, we may answer them. If not, we can try and merge that stuff if you think we should.
On chat, John Calloway joined a little while ago, and he's been using this pattern for a bit. He's saying that he uses that constructor approach also, and then he says it works really well for common underlying queries that he's using between different things. So other than that, we don't have a whole lot of questions on the feed. Mostly just been me sharing some links to some of the things we've talked about. So I think it's safe for us to do whatever we want at this point.
Okay, great. Do you think that we should cover something else from all these usages and from these sample applications?
Well, I mean, one question that we could show is if you get a new requirement, what does that look like, right? Like, what if, and I'm not sure what would be a good example that we could code up real quick, but in your sample app, if we came up with a new query and a new way that we needed to get the data, maybe we need to create a new controller endpoint. Let's just say, even if we wouldn't necessarily need one, let's just say that the client application is expecting to call a new endpoint on the controller, and it wants to get the data in a new shape that we don't support off that current one. What would we do to implement that endpoint?
Okay, let's imagine. Let me try to. For example, in the customer's controller, we will have. They will expect one additional route. It means that, okay, how can we play that? Probably we have to name that get something because it will be conflicting with this existing stuff. Actually, we may go the other way. We have this get by name. Let's command this. Imagine that here we have two ways of querying the customer. Okay, we have either you query by adding all those filter stuff, or you are querying by ID.
Sure.
Yeah. So imagine that you have new requirement that you have to add new route customers, and it should be specific to querying customers by name. So what you do first? First of all, you create the method in controller here, probably.
Yeah.
Right? So you have the new method. You still don't know what will be your usage here. So first of all, you go and create specification for that, and you name it. For example, customers by name.
Right.
So you created new specifications. Oh, this also using selector.
I think we just added that. I don't think we're using that.
Probably.
There we go.
Okay. So you add new specification. After that, you have to make use of this specification somewhere. And in our sample, that place is customer UI service.
Right.
And in this customer UI service, probably, okay, imagine that you don't have this one. So you will create new method that it will be, you will overload actually the same name, get customers, but it will be by customer name.
Okay.
So you add new method in your service, you're making use of your new specifications,
right?
And you are just mapping the results, and that you get back to the controller and you add that new method. So most usually you have to do just 2 or 3 changes. You add the ability for the new query. You are adding that by adding a class. You are not changing anything in your repository, etc. We just created new specifications. And after that, you are making use of that specification somewhere. You will not necessarily will have UI service as we have here. You can do it that directly from the controller. But if you have, then you'll have one additional method here, and you'll make it use in your new endpoint.
All right.
In existing code.
All right. Just so we're not totally cheating and just commenting out and redoing the code we already have, let me throw you in a requirement, and we'll see if we can do it. I want to know all customers that are over the age of 18. So I need to store the date of birth of the customer, and then I need an endpoint that gives me customers that are over 18.
Okay. So first of all, we have to go to here, and we have to, let's hold this as,
okay. We can't store age, right? We got to store date time, date of birth, right? Because age.
I just want to simplify this.
No. Let's make it complicated. Not super complicated, but just a little bit complicated.
Okay, we have here date time, and we have here birth date. Probably
sounds great. Yep, perfect. Now if you want to expose age from here, we can, but I would do it somewhere else. But it's up to you.
This is my standard. When you add properties, always I put, first of all, in the beginning, I set it as private. And afterward, if I need to set it from somewhere else, okay, I'll refactor this and I'll take it out.
Sure.
But by standard, always I start with private.
Okay.
With private settings. So maybe when you create the customer, probably you want to have the birth date as necessary while creating the object.
Sure. And if you want to, for simplicity's sake, if you wanted to skip that part and just let it be set a default value, that would be fine. So we don't have to spend a lot of time on reseeding the database and all that stuff. Just go up to line 16 and just set the date to something.
Okay, you can do it.
Actually, that won't work. You do have to store it in the database. Yeah. So yeah.
New get time, and it should be, what was the?
I was saying 18. Just say they're born in January 2000. 2001, 2000, 1, 1.
Okay, year 2001, month. Okay, January 15. Let's make it like this.
All right. And I guess we will need to do a migration and get this into the database if we want this to actually work.
The next thing that you do, you'll go the customer configuration. Right. If you need something to configure here additionally, you will do it here. For daytime, you don't need anything because, for example, if it was string, you may want to configure the length of the string probably. Yep. For decimal, you'll configure to be decimal 18 too probably, etc., etc. You'll do the migration stuff afterward. Then, okay, you change the DTO.
Right.
That's dated.
And for the DTO, we just want the age, right? Or do you want to put date of birth? Or both?
Okay, you can do int age.
Okay.
Okay. And that's it actually here. I don't even need this one. Probably it was, okay, all right. It was get customers.
Get adult customers. Or you could say by age, but it's got to be like at minimum age, right? You just say get adult customers, that'd be fine.
Yeah, I'm missing this one.
You need a closing angle bracket. Customer DTO greater than.
Exactly.
All right.
We need specification.
Yep. Now we can use your filter if we add something to it, right? If we had like a minimum age.
Yeah, I just wanted to show if you need something specifically and you have to create new specifications. Otherwise, you can use this one as well. We'll add here, but this is okay. Let's actually do it that way. Yeah. In the filter, actually, you'll require age. You'll not require date, probably.
Sure. Because maybe you have a drop-down list with minimum age or something like that, or adult or not adult. Okay.
The same thing will happen in the customer DPO filter, probably it was called.
Right.
We'll have this one.
Right. Perfect.
And we just have to. Oh, this is the case that I said in a minute. You here you should make them nullable.
Yeah.
So you have to know
if it's set or not.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay. And the customer spec here we can add additional stuff. So we have
just say dot value.
Filter age is not.
Yeah, or you can say dot has value if it's a nullable, but whichever you prefer. If you like that better, that's fine.
Yeah. Okay. If you go that way, it is like this.
Right.
And here we have query. Okay. Here is birth date. Here maybe we want to use date, not the time stuff.
And it's really a minimum age, right? Let's say. So, because I don't want to just get the 18-year-olds. I want to get everybody 18 and older. So their birth date is less than today minus that many years.
I think we have to use subtract for that. I think no. Oops.
And I don't know how this translates into SQL. This might we might have to tweak this to make it work in SQL. But
select birth date.
I think if we first calculate before we do the query, let's find that the minimum birth date, and then we can pass that into the filter. Dot years. Right? Dot total years. There's no year on that, huh?
Have new layout in the keyboard, so
go. Let me try a different approach, because I think we can just do a greater than in our query. So go up to line 35 and say
line 35. Yep.
Go in here and say var max birth date equal datetime dot today dot add years. Is there an add years? There better be an add years. There we go.
Yep.
Minus filter dot age. Okay, and then our where clause just says their birth date is less than max birth date.
Exactly. Okay. Years.
Dot value. Filter dot age dot value. There we go. And where x such that x dot birth date less than max birth date. And SQL can do that less than easily, so that'll be fine. Alright, that looks good.
Okay, we have this in specification. We have already in the customer UI service. We even don't do this at all.
Right. Now the other thing that we should point out here, if we back out and show that spec, that filter, this is unit testable. Like, we don't have to run this thing in the UI to see if it works. Like, we could write a unit test for that and pass it like a few different birth dates and see, you know, whether or not we get back the right filtered set that we expect. That's another benefit of specification. We'd want to get rid of datetime.now probably in order to test that really effectively, but But yeah, I mean, as long as we built our test set based on datetime.now, we'd be fine. But yeah.
Okay, I don't think we can run it before adding migrations here.
Right, yeah, we need to add the date of birth column. Do you have that?
Let me just
hopefully that's not too difficult. We still have 20. We have 20 minutes. We got lots of time to show these steps. So.
Okay, let me just change this. It should be Ardalis. There. Okay.
Yeah, these CLI commands for running migrations, I always end up putting them in my README file just so I have them to copy paste.
Exactly. And it's called sample DB context. Migration sample DB1. We're ready here. Okay. Did we did all the changes? Yes. Customer, we have only birth date and that's it. Build failed because we didn't even try. Oh, we made it required this here.
Yay. All right.
Now we have the new migration.
Right. Looks...
We have the columns, but we don't have data there.
Yeah, we got to do the seed data. Maybe for the seed data, you could give it a range of years. Like start in 1995 or something, and then just increment by age.
Here you'll find everything because it's
age is all 0. Oh, we didn't translate the age on the DTO, so the DTO is always 0. So we have to map it.
No, actually, I'm using automapper here. So because they are the same names.
No, not age, right? We have birth date and we have age.
So we have to do something like this. Map. Let me find how it should be done. I have on the other projects. Okay, it should be form member.
Age.
Guest. We have destination is age.
Right. Problem is calculating age is not necessarily trivial, but I guess you can do the date time subtract thing here. But the trick was to get the years.
Have some you have one.
You
can have calculated property here.
Birth date. Oh, you just want to give it a property that calculates it? That's fine. Just make it a function. Right.
It will be datetime now. Should you subtract it? I don't know why I'm stuck with this subtract.
Birth date. But then how do you get years out of this?
Exactly, that was my problem. We don't have years here.
It's weird.
Yeah, ticks.
Huh. Do total days divided by 365. I don't know, you'll be off on...
If you do minus, you can do minus, I think, with date time. For example, you can do this date time now. This won't work probably.
You can if you put it in parentheses, it does the same thing. That if you put parentheses around that, it gives you a time span.
No. The operator minus it's not. You have to use.
Cannot convert for system time span to int. Oh, that's because of your return. Yeah, that's why. So now say dot outside the parens. There you go. It's the same.
Oh, exactly. Okay. Years.
No, it's the same. Yeah, it's the same.
It's operator is overloaded.
Right.
Yeah.
But we're still stuck, right? Unless we,
365.
Yeah. We'll say that's close enough. If you have leap years in the way, then
we should be integer. So I may cast this like integer. It will truncate decimal,
right,
most probably.
Which is fine. That's what we want. Because if you're
here we can say from map from. Okay, map from. But now that you have the same name, it should work without this.
Right, you probably don't even need this because they're the same. Although, you're good. In this case, you do want it to be a property, not a function. So just make sure it's a property, and you'll be good.
Yeah, I did it. It's property.
Yep.
Here. This.
One more parenthesis around the outside. No, you got it. Where's that go?
This is.
Like you said, I don't think you need line 21 at all, though.
Exactly, because we have the same name here, but it's good to show how you can use if you have something different.
Right.
If this is, for example, method, then you'll use it as a method here. Otherwise, because it's property, it will work as it is. Now we have also to fix the seeds.
Right. So give it a starting date of birth that's 10 years ago or 15 years ago, and then just keep adding to it.
Well, it's here to we can end while seeding. It's much better.
Yep. Looks good. Decide if it's date or day. You said birthday in your constructor. So,
what is it?
Change line 23 to date.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay, and we have here now datetime now. We can use
dot add years. Just say add years minus I.
But not maybe I multiplied by 10.
Well, here I is going 1 to 100, right?
Yes. Oh, actually,
so
yes.
That's a lot of years. Or you could do add months if you want, even.
Minus 1.
Right. I'm pretty sure you can just do minus I. I don't think you have to do the -1 times. I think that works. One more paren and you're good. Cool.
Now I have to delete the...
Right.
Okay.
NuGet and then do another database update.
No, it should update automatically if we run here.
Oh, do you apply migrations when you run?
Yes.
Nice. We need a localhost page on the sample because people are going to hit that and not know what to do. We need a default page they can click on to hit that endpoint. Boom. Constructor birth date.
What is returning here? This is datetime, yes. Let me see from how many places we are calling this. We are calling only from the seed, yes?
You have a private customer constructor, or how is Entity Framework created?
Yeah. I usually put empty custom.
Yeah, I don't see it.
I haven't. Yeah, but we need this like this.
So how is it working before? How did you get EF to know how to create it? You must have put it in the configuration, right? So your customer configuration.
No, I haven't. No, it's weird. It was working, yeah.
Yeah, there must be somewhere that you told.
Because without empty one, it shouldn't work.
Right.
Actually.
Let's look at your customer configuration. I'm curious.
Now I'll open. No, we got the error because it was working in the local DB and I didn't delete that.
Okay.
It's nothing special here,
okay.
right?
Just making sure that there wasn't something crazy there. All right.
So here is empty and the SQL Express is empty. The opposite in JSON, this is using SQL Express, okay. Now we have 10 more minutes, right? Yes.
Yeah, maybe we can go a little bit over if we need to. But I think we got this. Now I'll take this video and I'll put it to a link to it from the specification README file so that folks can kind of see this overview if they want.
H10. So if I say now age,
and this should be a minimum age, yep, and I see 10 and I see 100. So
100, and you have 11, 12, 13, 14.
right. Okay, so if we say, you know, whatever, say 99, you should get like 2 records.
Exactly. So we have only 199, but because we are ordering by sorting by name, I guess, and this is before this. That's why it's
sure. No, but it's working, so nice. So that was pretty easy to do, I think.
Yeah, but I'm not very efficient on stream. So I'm just not used to do this on stream, so I'm a bit slow. Otherwise, it's really fast, actually. You just add few stuff. So let's examine what we have added here. We just added property here. It was birthday. On the DTO, we wanted not to store the date, but we wanted to store the age. Okay, so here we have age. In order properly to map and to do the calculation, we got here the calculated property. This is the same as you write only get. You don't have set. This is the shorthand notation of writing the same. So we are calculating here the age, and the mapping is done automatically through AutoMapper that we have this configuration here. You not necessarily have to write this because anyway these properties are named same, so the convention will do the work and it will be mapped automatically.
Now, if we didn't want to put that property on customer for whatever reason, just let people know, folks that are watching, you could also have done the work of calculating the age from the dates inside of the AutoMapper conversion. And you could have used an extension method or any other way to put that logic in there. Right here.
Yeah, this is the place that you will be doing that. Yep. So here you can do whatever you want. You can multiply by 10, for example, here. So exactly, all that logic, it can be done from here. But still, I would like to have that.
Right. In this case, I think it's useful.
Aggregate because
as long as we fix it so it's correct.
It's something that is related to customer, and it's nice to have this property here. Nevertheless, after that, we didn't change anything else. We just added the required properties in the filters, and that's it.
Now, did we end up adding a different route in the controller that we didn't use, or did we get rid of that?
Because we used the same one. No, we just use the same one here.
Cool.
So we added the properties in the filters. We changed the specification. We did the additional condition, and we did all those plumbing stuff regarding the DB configuration. We added property, etc., etc. I do think this is quite straightforward way of doing stuff. Maybe I don't. Everybody has their own preference, but I do think it's quite simple.
No, I think that worked pretty easily, and everything is very clean. It's very easy to unit test. You can, keep the specifications out of your UI logic. They're out of your repository, so they're not buried inside of your infrastructure layer or coupled to your database. I think it's nice. We mentioned caching. We're not using any caching here, but let's say you wanted to do caching on this. These filters that we have in the specification pattern itself work really well with data caching. The hardest problem with data caching tends to be coming up with the right key to use. And so this base specification also has support for creating that key. And here's an example that Fadi's bringing up. And when you enable the cache, you can use a key that you generate from the parameters that are passed into your specification. So if we wanted to have a cache of customers that are over a certain age, that's what we need in our cache key, is that age argument. And so that would be how we would build that cache key from that specification.
Exactly. This is one example how to do that. I just found in the test here. So exactly as Steve said, all you have to do is just enable the cache, and then you can utilize that. You can utilize whatever is added. Then you have these two properties. If you have added something cache enabled, it will be true, and you have the cache key here, and you can use it as you want.
Right, and it doesn't do the caching for you, right? It just provides you with the key that you would use for
No, just
your caching.
provides the information for you, and after that you can utilize that as however you want, actually.
Yeah.
Most probably you have one implementation that is without cache and one same implementation like cached customer UI service probably. And that customer cache customer UI service will use the original customer service, but it will just add the caching capability on top of each action. It will be like a wrapper of every method, and it will wrap within the cache, and that's it. I think there were some examples also in Steve's project.
Yeah.
It was eShop on web probably. I think there is a usage of caching core there as well.
Yep. I've got an article on my blog on implementing a cached repository, which is this one right here. I'll just throw on the screen for a sec. I posted the link to it in the chat. But if you're interested in this, you can use this with specification and just use the specification to get the key that you need for this. And this basically uses the decorator design pattern to add caching to a repository. All right. I think that's a good place to wrap it up. So thank you very much, Fadi, for being a guest this week.
It's my pleasure.
It was a lot of fun. It's hard to just do a stream where all you do is talk yourself and nobody else is there to have a conversation with, except on chat. But right, they're not really talking. So this was fun. I'm gonna see who else is online right now that we can raid, and go see those folks. Sorry about that. I don't know if you guys heard that, but that was loud. Let's see, what is it? Team, live coders. Let's go see who's online. I'll throw this up here. What is I Develop Things? What are they doing? I don't know who that is. I need to get rid of these ads. These ads need to go away. Do you watch a lot of streamers, Fadi?
Excuse me, it's getting interrupted. I'm not hearing very well.
Sorry, I was asking if you watch very many streamers. Looks like he's gaming. We'll try.
Can you come again?
Do you watch a lot of streams? You can't hear me? Maybe I killed my sound somehow.
Yeah, but the connection is getting interrupted something, so probably it's my connection probably.
Okay. Sorry about that. All right, I'm going to try and send us over here to Clarkio. So we'll do that. And I need to get better at this part of things. Like actually doing a raid should take me like 2 seconds. And Clarky has like left his chair, so this will be a surprise when he gets back. But thanks everybody for being here this week. The next 2 weeks, I'm actually going to be streaming on Coding Game. They have a fall challenge. So before I send you away, let me just mention that real quick. If you're not familiar with Coding Game, they have a bunch of different programming puzzles and things. But their fall challenge is building a game, basically like a bot, in whatever programming language you want, responding to inputs on the console and then giving your next command also as a console write. So this is starting in 5 days. And the next 2 Fridays I'm going to be streaming what I'm doing on Coding Game. So check it out, get involved. You can add me on there. I'm Ardalis on Coding Game. And we can kind of compete, see if our bots can beat one another in this game. So look for that the next 2 weeks. And with that, I'm going to raid Clarkio.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.